Hi, good evening. Welcome to the International Maritime Museum of Hamburg. My name is Damián Morán and I am glad that you join us today for this tour. I'm also especially glad that I am here today because I have missed this place, my workplace, but a very special place. The ones who have been following us on Facebook for a while may know a little bit about it. So for the next hour, I'm going to be telling you, I'm going to be giving you an overview of what we have here at the museum, and I'm going to be telling you some stories about the maritime history of humanity. But to start, I would like to bring you the story of the collection and the story of the building we are in, because this museum is in a very, very special building. This place is called the Kai-Speicher B. It means, translated to English, the warehouse, the Kai Warehouse B. It's a special warehouse because it's built on the water with a system that allows, or allowed in the past, wares to be taken from the water directly to this building. And this building, this piece of wood, actually is from 1879, so it's over 120 years old. This building is the oldest warehouse that is still standing in the harbor of Hamburg. Hamburg, which is a city which was built, or its origins date to the old Middle Ages. It's a city that was built between the lakes, the lake complex of the Ulster and the river Elbe. So actually Hamburg is the harbor. And Hamburg was for centuries an independent city. After the French-Prussian War, Franco-Prussian War, 1871, the German Empire was founded, and Hamburg should become part of this empire. But the rich people of Hamburg, so the business people of Hamburg, were afraid of the taxation system of the empire. So the compromise that was made was to give Hamburg a duty-free area in the port, a free port. We are in the free port of Hamburg. This building was made for this reason, as I said before, 1879, and actually it served as a warehouse between 1879 and the early 2000s. For some reasons, which are hard to understand, this building was not bombed in World War II, as was most of the city, of course. And the thing is, the city was then, so the warehouse was still in use, and on the early 2000s, this place was obsolete. It hadn't been repaired in a while, and it was not placed in a very attractive side of the city, actually. There was not much around. Much has changed since those years. So the city didn't know what to do with this place, because the last company went out, and but they weren't allowed to destroy it. They had to keep it because the place was protected by the German heritage laws. So what to do with this place? Now we have to go back in time for a while. We have to go back to the year 1934. In that year, a little boy from the city of Hamburg had the flu, the regular flu, not a very bad one, but he was at home and not feeling well. And so his mother decided to bring him a little present. And we have the present right here, so let me switch the camera. And this is actually the present the mother gave to this little boy, 6 years old. And this little ship became the favorite toy of this boy. He actually started collecting this kind of ships. He decided he wanted to become an admiral when he grows old. He developed a real obsession for everything which is maritime. And this obsession will follow this little boy, for the rest of his quite long life. This little boy was called Peter Tamm. And a couple of years later, here is a picture of Peter Tamm, looking more or less the way he looked when I first got to know him. He has on his hand, as you can see, that exactly same little ship who he kept his whole life. The thing is, he kept collecting and collecting, and he became a journalist, and then he became a very successful businessman in the media area. So he was a director, one of the on the directors board of Axel Springer, and but the whole time his actually obsession and as he said himself, his disease, his collector's disease, had to do with the maritime. He collected ships, he collected uniforms, he collected pieces of ships, propellers, boats themselves, everything which has to do with shipping. Yes, so that's the origin of the Peter Tamm Senior Collection. And on the 2000, you remember I was telling you about the building. The city of Hamburg didn't know what to do with the building. And somebody remembered, well, Peter Tamm has been asking for a while how to transform his collection, which by the time was already the largest private maritime collection worldwide. He wanted to transform it in a museum. And somebody said, well, why don't allow Tamm to build a museum there? So that's what happened. Actually, the Maritime Museum, so the building was, first, the collection became a private foundation, a no-profit foundation. Then the building was restored, repaired, and modified over a period of a little bit over 7 years. And on 2008, the Maritime Museum of Hamburg opened to show the collection of Peter Tamm and to also explain around 3,000 years of maritime history. So the thing is, Peter Tamm died some years ago of old age, and but in a way he may have left us, but he hasn't stopped collecting, because we keep collecting, and because this museum is a family affair. Nowadays, the director of the museum is Mr. Peter Tamm's son, also called Peter Tamm, which is in some way just as bad as his father. So he also has the same collector's disease. And well, now this is a story. Since over 10 years we have been open for visitors. And the place we are now, some of you may know it already, is the heart of the collection. It's the place where we have, here you see this very little first ship of the made by the company Viking, which was a company who used to make this kind of miniatures. And it is surrounded by the heart of the collection, which is 50,000 ship miniatures in a scale of 1 to 1,250. This is by far the largest collection of this type in the world. Here you can see we have the military navies of the world. Most of them are here with more or less miniatures. The British Royal Navy, the US Navy, and the different German navies since the 1850s are almost complete. We also have the merchant navy, the passengers navy, the historical ocean liner. Some of you might recognize this one with the iceberg beside it. Yes, that's the Titanic. And there are sailing ships as well. Special ships. Ships built for very special, to transport special materials. Different tankers, different offshore ships. Everything is actually in this collection, and every single one of these miniatures is a handmade miniature which represents a ship that has an history. That's actually what is fascinating. Every one of these pieces, every single one has an history behind it, an history that we try to tell in this museum. And now let me explain you very quick how most of these miniatures are made. So for this, I'm going to show you the display built by this man you see in the picture. He is a miniature maker. His name is Carlo Marquardt. He's a very good friend of the museum. And we offered Carlo Marquardt this display to explain the process of building. Actually, if you want to build a nice model, the first part is the research. You need to find the original building plans, transform them to the scale of the ship you want to build, or the form. Then different documentation, pictures, the right colors, sometimes also the modifications who have been made to the ship in the history, if you want to represent the ship not exactly the way it was built, but how it became later. With all this material, you can build a prototype like this. You can, some of you may have recognized this is, actually, let me go back. This is a Queen Mary II, the last existing ocean liner. Hopefully not the last in history. You will see the ship a couple of times more in this visit. So you have the prototype, except for the smallest parts. Those are made like the lifeboats, the different masts and cables and so on. Those are produced separately. With this prototype, you make a form. In this form, you can pour an elevation of metal, and then you open the form and you get a ship like this one. Actually, with one of these forms, Carlo Marquardt told us he can make approximately 60 ships. After that, the form starts to break and cannot be used anymore. Well, you have a ship like this. On the top is a Queen Mary. On the bottom of the picture, you see a Titanic, and then you have to correct the small failures and polish this piece and add the smallest pieces that you have produced in other forms separately. Then you have a ship a little bit like this Titanic on the front. Then you have to paint it by hand. Not with any colors. So, for example, if you have this container ship of the Hapag-Lloyd and it's this orange color, it has to be this orange. It cannot be another orange or just similar. And well, after approximately 14 weeks of work, here you have the Queen Mary II. You see it here in a scale of 1 to 1,250. This process is long, complicated, and now you have to imagine how it is to make every single one of these over 50,000 models that we have here. Well, that's a way to make these models. There are special models in this direction, unique pieces that are made by hand, and the other ones are also by my hand, but these are unique pieces, and the best ones, in my opinion, and the opinion of many, are made by Michael Wünschmann. So we have a collection of his models from the Japanese Imperial Navy. These miniatures are just incredible. Just maybe have a close look at the Mutsu if the camera is not dealing well with it. Look at the rigging. Look at the crew on board. It's just simply amazing. Actually, these miniatures are also fully articulated. Theoretically, you can play with the guns if you want. I wouldn't dare really to do so. There are also miniatures, some of my favorite actually, made of paper. Why not? So these incredible miniatures are made by Heinz-Peter Weiss, which is a great artist, a very nice man, and a friend of the museum. And yes, they are made out of paper. But Heinz-Peter Weiss doesn't only make miniatures, he makes also dioramas. That's like the next step. So this is, sorry for the reflection of myself, this is a diorama of the island of Heligoland, which is in the North Sea. And it represents the island of Heligoland in the year 1890. That was the year when the British Empire gave the island to the German Empire through international diplomacy. And the island is still a German island. The thing is, the work that is behind the construction of this diorama is absolutely incredible. Heinz-Peter Weiss actually collected every single documentation he could find about the island. So you see here the village. Not a single house here is just placed there because it looked nice. Every single one of these houses has been documented by pictures, city plans, etc. It's an incredible work. Some other people may have been writing a book about that. Model makers make a model out of it. And now let's go to a last model from this ninth floor of the museum. We're on the 9th floor. We actually just started, which is one of our favorite pieces here. Sorry. Here is, this is Hamburg. This is the port of Hamburg. And it's an absolutely incredible diorama with every kind of detail, and where you can really see how the different industry areas of a harbor work. And also something special about this diorama is it's not only the river and the harbor itself. It goes on inland, as you see, because it's, sorry, here we are, because it's not only the harbor itself, it's the railway, it's the roads, it's the processing plants, it's everything which exists behind the harbor, which actually keep us keep us provided with everything we need to survive, especially in these times, actually. So, the incredible port of Hamburg, and as you see, it ends. Well, the thing is, this diorama has been in the making for several years now. The work behind it is actually incredible, so nothing is left to, nothing is just like imagined here. Everything is exactly as it is in real life, only in a scale of 1 to 1,000. Sorry for that. 1 to 1,250. So yes, now. So we actually are, this diorama is being completed. So at one point in this area you see here, you will be able to see a part of the city of Hamburg called Altona, where there is a cruise terminal, for example. So it will continue, and we really hope to have this diorama done. Hopefully this year. There's been a little delay, like everything this year, but we hope we will have it done soon. So, sorry, 1 second. Here I am. Yes, so we are not done with the 9th floor, because there is a lot more here. But we don't have all the time in the world, so I have lots of things to show you. Lots of things to show you, yes. So we are going to go one store down. This is store number 8, or deck 8, as we call it here. So, now we are going down the stairs. And here we have our collection of maritime paintings. The collection of Peter Tamm of maritime paintings is approximately 7,000 pieces large. There is here on this deck a selection of them, the best of that we show to our visitors. But since I am not an art historian, I couldn't tell you anything exciting about it. But there is something which I can tell you about it, and it is in the Schatzkammer. That's German for treasure chamber. So here is the area of the museum where we keep our real treasures. So you can see here, this is a reproduction of the Santa Maria of Columbus. At least how historians agree today that the ship may have looked. There are no existing building plans of the ship preserved, so we can only guess how the ship looked in reality. This model is not golden, it's made of gold, it's massive gold. Well, except some of the pieces in the interior of the structure, which are not made of gold, because gold would be too soft for it, they are made of platinum. This wonderful piece was built by Wilm. This is a gold smith here in Hamburg. In the year 1992, when the discovery, if you want so, of America by Columbus, so 500 years after that, the travel of Columbus. The work behind it. So there is the thing, I don't know exactly how much this piece costs. There is, of course, a worth in the gold invested in it that could be calculated. But alone the work behind it makes it absolutely unpayable. And of course, it is in a very special place in our collection. But we have other treasures. I would like to show you so there are, of course, ships made of silver. There are ships, for example, this one is kind of important. Sorry that I interrupt my speech for a second. This is actually the oldest ship model we have in the collection. This is a French yard model, and it is dated around the year 1670. So it's a second half of the 17th century. And we have older objects in the collection, but when it comes to ship models, this is actually the oldest one. Some of my favorites also, ship models made of amber, which is a beautiful material to make ships of. But actually, I want to show you the most valuable models we have in the collection, and possibly the best of the whole collection. They are not made of gold or silver. They are actually made of food leftovers. Not a joke, it's really so. I am speaking about the prisoner of war bone ship models. These pieces are just amazing, amazingly beautiful, but they also have an amazing story behind them. These ship models were built by mostly French prisoners of war in Great Britain during the Napoleonic Wars. This means they were soldiers of the Napoleonic army. So most of them, since Napoleon had a popular army, most of them had other jobs before they became soldiers, became prisoners of the British, and in prison, the British allowed them to build objects and sell them. So, you see, some of them decided some of them made objects of wood and tried to sell them, but some of them started using bone, because these prisoners had twice a week in their rations. They had a meat either mutton or beef. And yes, and so there were bones that were left, so that were kept as leftovers. With the bones, soup was made, so the bones were cooked, and then they were thrown away. And some of these soldiers thought bone is a material which is very complicated to work with, but which can be very beautiful. So they started using these bones to make objects, among them also to make ships. So let me explain you a little bit how these people made these bones. These ships, I mean, sorry. So, do you see those small points on the hull of this beautiful ship? It's actually the example I used to use. So, those little black dots are very, very little nails with which the strips of bone building the planks are fixed to a wooden core, which is like the base of the ship. So, to fix it, they use these nails. But the thing is, bone is kind of a sensible material, so you cannot just like nail through it, because it breaks. You first have to make a hole for the nail. These holes were made using a small drill, a hand drill, which was also handmade. So they first have to make this hole. To make a hole, it has to be made very carefully. To make a hole through this bone, you need approximately 10 to 15 minutes. We have tried it here. Our colleague Manfred Stein, which maintains and repairs these ships, has done that. So you just imagine one of these points, each one is like 50 minutes of work. And this is like the easiest part of the whole work. Have a look at the rigging. This amazing rigging, which these prisoners had to make out of their memory, because they had no building plans of ships, and most of the times they couldn't even look at a ship from their prison. So just imagine the work behind it. Yeah, well, these guys were in prison, so they had all the time in the world, and they created these incredible pieces. It is calculated that there is approximately 650 of this kind of models, of these bone ship models in the world. Of these 650, we have in this room that I'm showing you right now 33 wonderful examples. That's actually the largest collection of this kind of models worldwide, at least the largest one which is in a public space, which we are quite proud of, if I may say so. By the way, again, the bone in these models is only animal bone. So there is no, there are some not very serious people say it may be human bone. No human bone on these ships. The only thing which is human in some cases, I mean in the cases where you have the original rigging still on, some of these ships have been restored many times through their existence. So, but if you have the original rigging, sometimes the rigging is made in human hair. Sounds a little bit grim. It is not. The thing is, these prisoners had to cut their hair sometimes, and their own hair served very well as to create the ropes of the ships. They had to use very primitive instruments and very and didn't have many materials, and still they created these incredible objects which are the crown of any maritime collection worldwide, and also the crown of the collection of the museum. But maybe we should go on, and so here I am. We are now going 2 stores down. I'm really sorry, we are going to be missing one. I cannot take you everywhere because we wouldn't have enough time. So deck 7 is our deck where we is our deck about oceanographic exploration, shipping, and also the offshore industry. But we are not going to go through that one today. We are going directly to the deck 6. Sorry. So, deck 6 is our deck dedicated to passengers transportation and also to cargo ships in the modern age. Just a clarification, in maritime history we speak of the modern age after the Industrial Revolution. So it's actually everything which comes after the middle of the 19th century. So around 1850 until today is the modern age. Everything before is what we call the age of sail. I am standing here in front of two rather recent acquisitions of our collection, two of our most impressive models. These are the yard models of the Cap Arcona and the Cap Polonio. We have received these objects together with the historical archive of the company Hamburg Süd. This is an incredible treasure. We have been receiving it since the end of last summer. The first objects came in. We are working through them. We are preparing an exhibition that would open about the history of this shipping company that will open hopefully 2021. We are working on it as good as we can, but you must understand in the actual situation we cannot give any dates. But this exhibition will take place, and these two models represent the golden age of the ocean liners, of the transport of passengers. Especially incredible because of the construction of the model, over 5 meters of length, and also especially incredible story in a very sad way toward its end is the Cap Arcona. The Cap Arcona, in a way, was the this ship was built in 1927, and she was the queen of the passenger ships that went from Europe to South America. Hamburg Süd specialized on the South Atlantic line between Europe and South America, and this was on that line the largest and most luxurious ship in the late 20s and early 30s. This story would be incredible, and it would be remembered as one of the most beautiful ships ever if it wasn't for its more than horrible end. On the 3rd of May 1945, just days before the end of World War II, just as it was ending, this ship that had been expropriated by the Nazi regime was used by the SS to transport the forced labor that had been imprisoned in the concentration camp of Neuengamme here in Hamburg. And so this ship was used for kind of a death march at sea. It was bombed by the Royal Air Force that recognized this ship as a troops ship, believed aboard there were only German soldiers, and a great deal of victims of the concentration camp system of Germany. Sorry for this small. So, somebody asks about the scale. The scale of this model is 1 to 37. Yes. So let's go on. Actually, on the 3rd of May, we will be posting about this story. It's going to be 75 years, and we are preparing a post on it. So let's go to the to have a broader view on the history of passenger shipping. It starts with the Industrial Revolution. It starts with ships like this one. This is a beautiful model. This is the Ammonia from 1855. You see the sails and you see the funnel. So most ships in the early Industrial Revolution were hybrids. They used sail and a steam engine to as a propulsion, as a means of propulsion. In very early passenger ships, there were some cabins for the passenger with money. But back in the day, from the mid of the 19th century until the mid of the 20th, millions of Europeans moved from Europe, emigrated from Europe to America, North and South, also Australia. At the beginning, they did it in ships like this one. Actually, people were transported in those ships as wares, so they were just in the cargo bay. So actually, the introduction of third class was great for these people. Third class was bad, but it was better than to be transported just as if you were cargo. So very important for the evolution of passenger transportation is actually this man. Some of you may know him already. This is Albert Palin. Albert Palin was he was a hamburger who was born in a Danish Jewish family who had a business selling ship's tickets to immigrants that wanted to go, especially to North America from Hamburg. So the company this small company of the family of Palin was bought at a certain point by the Hapag. The Hapag was the large company in Hamburg taking care of the line in the North Atlantic. Albert Palin was an extremely talented man. He rised in that company and became and ended up becoming the director of the company. He had two very important ideas that really changed passengers' transportation. On the one hand, he created the Ballinstadt. The Ballinstadt is in an island in the River Elbe. It is a little bit like Alice Island in New York, but not for arrivals, but for departs. So it's a place where immigrants would go. And sorry, I'm telling you some okay, yes. So immigrants would go that wanted to travel to America, would buy the tickets in Hamburg. The problem is these people will have bought a ticket and will have to wait, not usually spending all the money they had on that ticket, and they will have to wait until the ship departs. That can take days. And the problem is, while they were waiting, they will have no money. They will have no money for food. They will have no place to stay. The condition in the working class areas in the city of Hamburg was very bad in the day. So this idea, the Ballinstadt, this place built by Albert Palin, well, built by the company after his idea, was a place where the immigrants could stay until the ship departed. They would have food. Doctors will take care of them, especially because if they arrived to America being ill, they would be sent back to Europe at the cost of the company. That was bad for the company, of course. And this idea, this creation, made a lot of money to the company because immigrants would say, okay, maybe the tickets are a little bit more expensive, but it's better to have some safety. So they started buying this more and more passages at the Hapag, and Palin became the director. second idea of Palin has to do with what do you do with a passenger ship in the winter months where nobody wants to cross the Atlantic because the weather is very, very bad. So what do? You actually, Palin had the idea to send those ships into a pleasure trip. This is actually what we call a cruise today. The concept existed as a private idea to have a pleasure trip with your rich friends in a private ship. But Palin was the first one, the Hapag, after the idea of Palin, were the first one to implement this. The idea was mocked by many at the beginning. They said it would never work. Well, the funny thing is it worked from the beginning. And actually, just a little time after the first cruise ship, the Hapag built this beauty here. This is the Prinzessin Victoria Luise, which is actually the first purpose-built cruise ship in history. And the rest is history, as we can say. Because as we show here in this display, so as we show here, the evolution of the history of shipping, there comes a point in the 1960s where ocean liners, where the crossing of the ocean with a ship is nothing that somebody would like to do, because there are commercial jet airplanes. What takes days on ship, you can resolve in a matter of hours. So nobody is crossing the ocean in ships, or almost nobody anymore. So what do those companies do today if they still transport passengers? They have cruise ships. It's actually the main reason why somebody, except for ferries, why somebody would travel on a passenger ship today, is to make a cruise. Except there are still one exception. I told you about it before. The Queen Mary II, which is not a cruise ship. It makes cruises, but it's an ocean liner. There is a matter of design there. So the last evolution in this industry, we see it actually here, and that one is the Mein Schiff 3, and here is what it's called club ships. The thing is, in the 90s, only old people will make cruises. So the companies decided to create club ships, which is a cruise ship for the middle class, also having a targeted audience that's a little bit younger than the other ones. And this was quite a success. And actually the cruise ship industry was in decay on the early 90s, and nowadays it still works very well. Well, not right now. The cruise ship industry is having great problems, as we all know, and we hope they will manage to come out of this situation actually well. Okay, now I'm taking a little bit too long. Let's go to the cargo transportation. Very fast, the evolution in the modern age. We have here Bremen from 1858. This is another beautiful example of an hybrid ship from this time. So this ship has, as you see, a funnel. You see it here. It already has a propeller. Very, very important. Almost as important for shipping as the steam engine itself, but still have sails. The thing is, these ships were not that adequate to transport wares, because the steam engine was very heavy and consumed a lot of coal. So it was expensive to have it on, and also you had to carry a lot of coal with you, which is not the reason why you use a cargo ship. You want to carry your cargo, not just coal. But through the second half of the 19th century, ships evolved into this. New steam engines needed less coal, had more power. You don't need sails anymore. Instead of sails, you have cranes aboard. You have the loading bay inside. And you can just like load and unload from the ship directly to the port. The funny thing is this ship is from 1911. The Japanese Prince. Beautiful model. But ships like this existed since the end of the 19th century. Now here we have another example, also a beautiful model. It looks very different, maybe. This is the S.A. van der Stil from 1965. So it's over 50 years, the difference between that one and this one. But actually the system is more or less the same. You see, you have the cranes on board. You have the gates, you open, you have inside your cargo bay. So the function is more or less the same. But the thing is, this stayed like this until the late 50s, when Malcolm McLean, an American, so here we have more examples of general cargo shipping, which was a way of shipping for the second half of the first half, sorry, of the 20th century. And it didn't end it completely, but it started to end when Malcolm McLean on 1956, sorry, invented the container. There had been some containers, so some projects to create a standardized container. But Malcolm McLean was actually a trucker, so he thought about the backside of a truck. So a container, it's actually just the backside of a truck that you can move completely, put onto a ship, or onto a train, or onto another truck. So this idea was a real revolution. It's actually called the containerization, and it has changed everything. It has changed the world as we know it, actually. It has changed the life of seafarers around the globe, especially because ships that used to stay for days at port, on times of ships like this, now stays maybe just 12, 24 hours. So sailors don't really have much time on their shore leave, which actually affects cities like Hamburg, cities that are harbor cities. You don't see seafarers in the city anymore because they actually have no time. We go through, actually, wait a second. This is actually half a container. So only a real container has 20 foot of length. This is half one. It has only 10. So, what's up with the container ships nowadays? Only not nowadays. This example, this is the Regina Maersk. This was built in 1996. This is a Post-Panamax container ship. It was back then too large to cross the Panama Canal. Back in the day, largest container ship in the world. Nowadays, well, the ship is not active anymore, but it would be just, sorry. Oh, okay, this was a little break. In comparison to the very, very large container ships today, this would be a small one. We have here this display. Oh, the reflections don't make it very good to see, but you see the nearest ship is a triple E class, also of Maersk, which was the largest ship in the world 2013. Now it's been overdone. But if you look, the first one is the Ideal X. Here, sorry for the shadow. The Ideal X That was the first ship who ever transported containers. And maybe if I move like this, you can have a quick idea of how ships are getting bigger and container ships. And this is just 2013. It has already been bitten. The question is, where does it end? But, well, we have we have no time to go to see our tanker ships. We will do that in another tour sometime. We are planning to do specialized tours of special parts of the collection in the future. Now we are going to deck 5. That's where we have our collection regarding the history, or exhibition regarding the history of modern naval warfare. Here again, you're going to see, just like one store upstairs, it starts with hybrid ships. Actually, this ship looks more or less like a ship of the age of sail. Also, how the weapons are installed on deck just cannons. It has side wheels, which is not very good for open sea, but that's another subject, and sails, and also a steam engine. This is the middle of the 19th century, but there would be a very, very fast evolution, which will, so it will be a series of steps that would revolutionize naval warfare in the second half of the 19th century. First of all, here you have a more or less model of a more or less traditional cannon. During the American Civil War, in the 60s of the 19th century, ships like this one were built. It was a time where a lot of experimentation was made. Ships will become ironclads. That means they will get armor to protect them from shootings. Cannons will start to be mounted on turrets. That means from this point, when you mount a cannon in a turret, you can really point the direction where you want to shoot. This was not possible before. Next big revolution, something that changed a lot of things, and something which is going to be very, very important, is still very important today, is the torpedo. The torpedo, here is an example from our collection. So, the torpedo allowed to create torpedo boats. Little boats, very cheap to produce compared to big battleships. But the interesting thing is these little boats are perfectly capable to sink great battleship if they hit right. The thing is also, these torpedo boats will always be very wet, will always drive very close to the water. At one point, this kind of torpedo boats will start to dive. That is actually the first functional submarines that were used for warfare were actually more diving torpedo boats than real submarines. At least that's what the military historian says. So armor ships, cannons, which became naval guns mounted on turrets, and torpedoes. There is so between the ships that fought in the Napoleonic Wars and the ships that fought in the wars after, so in the second half of the 19th century, there was no comparison anymore. Even if ships like this so-called free dreadnoughts of the late 19th century could be smaller than the great ships of the line of the Napoleonic Wars, they would be much more powerful and much more useful for the war effort. As you see, some colleagues of the maintenance had been working while we are closed. That's why some things in the collection may not look as they used to look when we are open. So, I've used the word pre-dreadnought before. There is a pre-dreadnought because there is a dreadnought. That's a ship built in 1906 by the British Royal Navy. We don't have a large model of it in the collection, but the thing is, a dreadnought is a battleship which is specially fast and carries specially heavy artillery, much more than it used to be before. So this as soon as the Royal Navy built the dreadnought, all other navies had to adapt, and all ships considered pre-dreadnoughts were obsolete. The dreadnoughts were the big ships that fought in World War I. They were part of the arms race that drove to that that war, mixing languages, and they are also the ships that fought during World War I in the Battle of Jutland, the Skagerrak-Schlacht in German. That's a confrontation between the Royal Navy and the German Imperial Navy. The destruction at sea there was nothing comparable to this battle before. Actually, it is an extremely complicated discussion who won that battle. The fact is, both navies lost a lot of ships and thousands of men at sea. That was the conflict between these big ships. There was never again a great battle fought principally by battleships at sea. Actually, here we enter in a rather dark, I'm sorry for that. Usually there is more light here, but somebody turned off the lights when they were cleaning. Sorry for that. We arrive in World War II, and we have our area dedicated to the great battleships of World War II. Some of you might recognize the battleship Bismarck, a very, very popular, famous battleship. It was the big, the proud of Nazi Germany when it was built. Her sister ship, the Tirpitz, and the largest of them all, the Yamato of the Japanese Imperial Navy. The thing is, the usefulness of this kind of great battleship has been much discussed. Actually, before the dreadnoughts were built, there was a strategy school in France called La Jeune École. These strategists in France, had the theory that such large ships were not practical anymore. That actually submarines, torpedo boats, and small units that were able to disrupt the commercial shipping of the enemy was what counted. Especially because this one, the Bismarck, was actually, well, there is a lot of discussion about how it ended. It was 10 days at sea and then sunk. The main destroyer of the Bismarck, in a way, are this kind of little airplanes. Very cheap to produce. Throwing torpedoes. So, how useful the Bismarck was for the for the German war effort in World War II? Actually, not much. What is sure is that the Bismarck looks like this today. What you see here is our diorama of the wreck of the Bismarck. Sorry. What you don't see here is approximately 2,000 men that sunk with the ship. Similar history, not exactly the same end, but also an end. The battleship Yamato. Only here is not 2,000. Here is 2,500, approximately. Here is our diorama of the wreck of the Yamato. Actually, the relevant aspects of so there are nowadays two relevant aspects in naval warfare. The submarines. This is a section I won't be showing you today, but our submarine section. But there will be a tour on the submarine section one day soon, and an exclusive one. And airplane carriers, naval aircraft. This is our section dedicated to it. This is actually already in World War II what was more relevant. But for traditional reasons, there was still battleships being built. And I'm realizing I'm reaching 1 hour and I still have some things to show you. I'm sorry. Well, that I took longer in these places. It always happens to me. So, people, now we are walking in our 2-hour deck 4, where we have our military section and our section dedicated to life aboard in the Navy. So, and going down to deck, so you can see our uniforms collection. So there, this is deck 3. This is a deck dedicated to the history of shipbuilding, and deck 2 is dedicated to the age of sail. But some of you may already know this picture. This is one of the largest models in our collection. This is the Wappen von Hamburg 3. It's a very interesting ship, and it was actually the favorite object of our founder, Professor Peter Tamm. This amazing model represents one of the 4 ships that wore this name, that were built by the city of Hamburg after the decay of the Hanseatic League left merchants from Hamburg defenseless in the face of pirates. So actually this is a pirate fighting ship. This ship used to accompany merchant convoys. That's the reason why ships like this are called convoy ships. They used to accompany merchant convoy ships, convoys of ships, in the Northern Sea, where there were pirates, and especially in the Mediterranean area, where there were a lot of pirates in the early 18th century. The ship was built in 1722. This model, for those among you who would like to know, it's made in a scale of 1:16. Quite a monster. And it was the 4th like this one. Before that, the Hanseatic League would take care of the protection of the ships of their members. So deck 2, very, very fast. We start in the Middle Ages. You see it back there, maybe. Vikings, the Hanseatic League. China as a sea power, a very interesting subject, but a little bit too long for today. The way to India, which led to the European ways to America in rather small ships. which is very interesting. This kind of very small Portuguese and Spanish ships were actually the main discoverers, the caravels. The Ottomans as a sea power, the English and later the British as a sea power, the Dutch and the companies, and here is our overview of the evolution of sailing ships during the modern times until the early 19th century, where the end of the age of sail came. It took place during the Napoleonic War, and we have our our installation dedicated to the honor of Horatio Nelson, Admiral of the British Royal Navy, fought 23 battles, never lose one, especially because he had a tendency to think outside of the box, which made him a very good admiral in a world where, in a moment where naval battles were fought in a very traditional way. He actually died in his 23rd battle, that's the Battle of Trafalgar in southern Spain. He died in the battle, but he won the battle nevertheless. So that's the end of this area. Not really. We have modern sailing ships, or little section dedicated to piracy, the modern windjammers, beautiful model of the Poison. That's a subject for another day, because I want to take you to the last, to the place where I love to finish my tours. Most certainly the coolest exhibit in the whole museum. Not the most relevant, but the coolest. Here is closed right now, but this is our shipping simulator, state-of-the-art software where we give guides to our visitors about how to ship. So how to get into a harbor with a ship like this one, for example. And now the last object I want to show you today. So this is, there is Captain Kudel, that's our mascot. It's a little bit on the way. You are looking at the Queen Mary II built in a scale of 1 to 50, made completely out of Lego. The thing is, the ship is made as near to the original as possible using Lego pieces. Let me check the numbers, I can tell you them. So, it's approximately, only the ship, 780,000 pieces. It weighs 870 kilos. The construction of the ship plus the repairs that the builders did to the ship 3 years ago took approximately 1,500 hours of work, and it represents the ship, the way it looks when it's being overhauled and repaired and fixed at the, wait for it, at the Dock 17 of Blomfoss, which is actually just 1.5 kilometers or maybe a little bit more from our museum away. It was built by two professional Lego builders. Yes, these guys earn their living building Legos. Kind of incredible. Very nice people and very funny guys. And when they were done building this model, they asked if it would be okay to put some Lego figures on it to make it a little bit funnier. And yes, people said, yes, I'm going to go, sorry, over our protective. So we have to keep it on record, because if not, people start actually stealing pieces. And so there are cows, and there is Mr. Krabs holding a pizza, and Jar Jar Bin is fishing in the Elbe. There is a robot fighting an octopus. Yes, well, we have our football teams represented also here, the football teams from Hamburg. Oh, there is a pink bicycle hanging from the crane. This pink bicycle is actually the signature of Klaas, one of the two motor builders. He comes from the Netherlands, which is like the country of bicycles. So he always puts a pink bicycle when he makes a diorama out of Lego. There are other figures. It's just amazing. It's a funny thing, but if people remember one object from the museum, they will remember this one, most of them, which is kind of funny. Okay, so wait a second. I am done for today. Thank you very much for following. It's been a pleasure. I've been wanting to do that for a long time. I'm sorry if the camera didn't work that well. The new system we had kind of broke down quite early in the tour, so I've been holding the camera with my hand. But it's fine. So I'm here on deck 1, and yeah. It was a great pleasure to have you here. I'm sorry that I couldn't moderate your comments, but as soon as I have a moment this evening and tomorrow, I promise I will be answering all of them and giving you the information you want. And it's been amazing. Please come visit us in Hamburg when you... oh, hi, colleague, also working on a Saturday. That's very nice. So... it's great to be with you, and please continue to follow us and come to Hamburg as soon as we are able to open. And yes, have a great Saturday. Ahoy!